Hey everyone, Synthetic Future here, and today we're going to do a video about a often spoken of topic that I keep seeing of more and more, and I think it's interesting to have a little bit of a chat about. Now, I had originally planned to do this whole scripted thing with some jokes and stuff and some examples, but I feel like that's not quite the tone I want to go for. I also waited a bit with covering this topic until some bigger, more notable channels talked about this topic, but eventually, as a creative, you have to chime in on the topic, so I figured, well, might as well join the conversation. After all, my name is Synthetic Future, so there's already synthetic in there. Might as well talk about the future a little bit. So the topic of today is AI art, and I think it's very important to bracket those AI letters because, let's be honest, it's not AI, it's not intelligence at all. We are talking here about machine learning. If you want a better understanding of what these things do, I would highly recommend Computerphile, for instance. Has a very good series about ChatGPT, for instance, going years back, talking about what it is, how it works, and there's also a good series about stable diffusion, how that works, but to really take a big subject and make it small, it's basically AI learning or the AI thing is more like machine learning. So you take really large data sets and you tell a computer what you expect of it to do. And that way it can learn to predict behaviors and patterns and create things. Although it's usually more like manipulation. So in the example of AI art, what these makers do is they take very large data sets of art. The way they obtain these large data sets is often kind of questionable morally. Quite often the makers of the original artwork do not get any say in whether their works are used or not. And this is a very dumbed down kind of way. It's a bit more complex than that, but basically what you do is you take an artwork and you say, this is a dog. You show another dog, you say, this is a dog. You take another dog, you say, this is a dog. And at some point you ask the computer to make a dog, and it will create a dog after the images you have shown it. And if it does a good job, you will say, oh, well, great job. And if it does a bad job, you basically exit off and you try again. So that's the really short version of this thing. But it's important to remember what these things are. They are not thinking, they are not intelligence. They are merely a series of habits and things they have seen, which can be recreated. And that's important to remember. Doesn't really matter much for what is AI art going to do in the future, because it's already in a pretty good state. Like stuff like DALL-E and Midjourney can create some pretty good artworks, although again, very questionable how they obtain the knowledge of these art styles, and very often they even completely rip off things. You will often see parts of signatures still in the images and stuff like that. Very questionable. But what is not questioning, or what is not to be questioned, is that these artworks are starting to get convincing. Like, you can show these to people and they will be like, whoa, that's pretty impressive. Same goes for ChatGPT. Even though it has quirks, there's still a lot of things it can do which are pretty impressive. But that also creates some dangers. And that's the most important thing to talk about, I think. And I think Thunderfoot did a pretty good job talking about this, and Computerphile as well. So we'll link those videos. But basically, with the state of things right now, these computer learning things have a pretty big margin of error. Especially ChatGPT is very good at giving wrong answers very convincingly, like many YouTubers. So, in a sense, it's not that bad, I guess. But it is a danger. It's very good at predicting text, but it's not very good at troubleshooting things. It relies on you saying, hey, things are wrong, for it to correct the mistake. But if you are not knowledgeable, you will just simply assume that this all-knowing black box knows what it's talking about. And that's where a lot of misinformation will start to exist. And that's what I'm mostly afraid of at this stage, because more and more people are relying on these tools to get information without critically thinking about where does this information come from. And people will defend these tools by saying, well, you can ask them where the information comes from. But let's be honest, most people won't do that. A lot of people take things at face value, like typing into Google something and taking the very first answer and saying, yeah, well, that's the answer, which is a shame. So I think it's very important to stay critical in times like these. And every time you see an answer, don't just assume the answer is right. Try to find some information about the answers, because that's the short-term danger of this trend, is a lot of misinformation. Now, if you toss in some voice synthesis and deep faking, and sprinkle in that little magic from ChatGPT to make very convincing pieces of story, this thing can go south pretty fast, because now you have the tools to not only manipulate images, you also have the tools to manipulate voices, and you have the tools to manipulate dialogue in a convincing way. So we're moving towards the era where you can completely deepfake a person, and even deepfake scripts. We're not there yet, which is good. That's a direction we are going. A lot of people are very much like, oh, these are great tools and you can solve so many problems with them. But we are forgetting that there's a very dark side to this thing. And we have to be very careful of that. Because, and that's something Thunderfoot actually talks about, these tools can also be used by scammers. These tools can be used by people who don't have the best intents for humans. So it can be used to write viruses. They can be used for password hacking, social engineering, all sorts of pretty nasty stuff. And that's honestly kind of scary, because there is going to be a point, and it's not there yet, where most of the people will not be able to discern a actual human being from a computer constructed human being. And that's pretty weird. We're going to get into the absolute age of catfishing, I guess. This is good for MTV, I guess. They can get that show going. It's troubling. Think of people convincing relatives they are you by taking your voice and image and sending videos of you saying things. Blackmail would be particularly easy of me, because my face is on the internet, my voice is on the internet, so that's not great. But there's some serious problems. And I don't know how to deal with these issues, to be perfectly honest, but they are kind of scary. And that's just like the personal feely stuff. There's also the work stuff. I am, in a sense, a creator, but I don't make any money of it. So if I lose my creative thing, it would suck, because it's an outlet. But it wouldn't take money from me. And for the foreseeable future, I don't think the government will jump on this tech, so I should be safe. But there's plenty of creatives out there that solely rely on their art skills or their creative skills. There's coders that rely on their coding skills. And with these tools advancing, the line between skill and replaceability is going to get blurred in a lot of fields. Because imagine if I were to hire someone to make some art for my upcoming CD or something. I would easily pay a few $100 just to get some good artwork, and I might want one of those booklets, and I want everything to be free of copyrights because I want to use it and sell it, of course. It can get quite expensive. On the same hand, I could also just take Midjourney, type in a word and be like, well, that's pretty close. Hit the give me a variation button a couple of times, upscale it, slap it onto a CD and be like, well, $10, fixed it. So why would I even pay these creatives anymore? Right? And the same will go for copywriters. Why would I write a story in my booklet? Why would I just ask ChatGPT to write that story in my booklet for basically free? And with coding, why would I hire coders which are highly skilled with years of experience if these text learning things can do mostly the same thing with a pretty good rate of accuracy? Again, we are not here yet, right? This is future talk. But we will reach that point likely. And as Tom Scott said, we don't know where on the curve we are. This could very much, what we see now, could be the absolute high of these tools, and it's not going to get any better. I highly doubt it. I think these tools will get way more advanced very quickly before we can even start to comprehend and regulate it, which is also scary. So yeah, it's not a great vibe, this video, really. And that's because I am not a great fan of these tools. It's just, there's something unsettling of black boxes that spit out of information and people just assuming everything is okay with that. And a lot of people react to that statement by saying, well, Google is a black box, right? You can type something into Google and Google will find things, but it will find what companies pay Google to find. I think that's not completely fair. Because I think it's very easy to see the source of things, and it's very easy to Google different terms and get completely different results. I mean, it might just be because I live in Europe that Google works better, and sure, but I never had the feeling that it's trying to steer me in any specific direction. Same goes for YouTube. I can find my sources. I can find people that look reliable, and I can often check their sources to see if it's based on any sort of research. And I could do the same with ChatGPT, of course. But how many people will do a thing like that? And that's what worries me. Like, there's a lot of people out there that will still believe anything you tell them. Let alone if some super advanced AI tells them. Because they are not going to know that ChatGPT is just text prediction, right? It knows how a good written thing should look, and it can very well recreate that even without doing any research. It can tell incredibly convincing stories, and I think Vandervoort even mentioned it. There's already a lot of YouTube videos being uploaded that are just ChatGPT going through voice synthesis with a bunch of stock video, and it mostly passes as content. That's crazy. It really is. So I still don't know how to feel about this whole thing. I don't think it's the great, glorious freer of the working force. All I see is big corporations spending tons of money on compute power to make most creative people pretty much obsolete. That's the direction I'm looking at. Hopefully it will be a resurgence of the kind of punk vibes, with small underground shows and punk attitudes, but I don't know. I don't know how to feel about all of this. So that's my ramble about this thing, how I feel about it, where I stand. I'm very curious to know where you stand. Is this the great savior of humanity? Is it the destroyer of humanity? Is it just a stupid fad that will pass in a couple of years? Could be. It's a great learning tool. Do you think humans will benefit from this technology? Let me know. I'd be curious. Maybe we could do a little follow-up, seeing what you think, how you feel about it, and We can also check how many bots comment here, because YouTube definitely likes the bots a lot. So yeah, that's me rambling about AI stuff. Interesting. Unscripted. So that's cool. Yeah. Comment thingies. Do it.